My name is Victoria Blajado. I go to Roosevelt High School in Seattle, Washington. I traveled to Italy with my Latin class and enjoyed a trip through Italy with Explorica in mid-February 2018. We spent 12 days in Italy and visited a number of cities. Some of them were Venice, Florence, Sicily, ancient Rome, the Vatican City, Sorrento, Pompeii, and Herculaneum. I loved all of Italy, but my main focus was the one on Michelangelo and his art in Florence and Rome. Painter, sculptor, and architect. Michelangelo was born on March 6, 1475. He died on February 18, 1564. The Medici family was the most powerful family in Florence at that time. Their wealth was primarily through banking and textiles. The family was influenced through their use of their wealth. They were skilled in gaining power in all areas of society, through politics, business, and church. They showed their power and influenced others to do the same. Early on in his life, Michelangelo had contact with the Medici family when he became a teenage apprentice to a famous painter. There he was exposed to the skill of painting frescoes. In 1489, Lorenzo de' Medici, the ruler of Florence, asked a famous painter to give him two of his best students. The famous painter sent Michelangelo and another student. Lorenzo noticed the talents of Michelangelo and had him move into his palace, where he was educated along with his children. As a result, Michelangelo was treated as family and encouraged in his education. His father was given a respectful position in that palace. Michelangelo was in a position to understand the Medici family and how they wanted their influence and power to be expressed in the arts. He was exposed to the most premium families in Florence and learned under spectacular sculptures. He received permission from the Catholic Church to examine and study dead bodies. He was able to learn more about the human body through this experience. For the most part, his patron allowed Michelangelo artistic freedom and his authority. He used all the resources that his patron provided to learn new methods and inherit his skills. Michelangelo's David, Accademia Museum in Florence. David is one of the most recognizable statues in the world. It shows David as a shepherd boy getting ready to go to war with Goliath. The statue established Michelangelo at 29 years old as the most important sculptor of his time. The statue highlights the use of movement and body placement. Michelangelo shows muscles that are resting and others in use, as well as a sculpture in perfect balance. In the Explorica trip to Accademia, I was able to see how large the statue of David really was. David is a towering figure and looks like a real giant. While in the Bible story, David is portrayed as a young boy, Michelangelo's David is a young man and not a boy. Michelangelo's Pieta, St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City. The statue was authorized for a French cardinal for his funeral monument. It is the only piece that Michelangelo ever signed. Legend has it that he overheard pilgrims talking about his work being done by another sculptor, and he signed it as a result. It is considered the best example of classic Renaissance style. The sculpture depicts the human's emotions of grief in Mary's face, as well as the realistic details of the bodies of Jesus and Mary. The folding of the clothes of Mary's gown and Jesus' garment look natural. The Pietà is another great work for Michelangelo and is widely recognized as the most famous description of the Pietà. In the Explorica trip to St. Peter's Basilica, we saw the Pietà firsthand as a three-dimensional figure. It was very lifelike and filled with emotions. Last Judgment, Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City. Pope Julius II hired Michelangelo to decorate the ceiling and the wall of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo completed the 65-foot ceiling alone. He spent endless hours on his back and worked in private. This work is considered to be the most complex images of God's creation and the Last Judgment. Michelangelo had the most powerful Medici family, amongst others, as his patrons. This did not mean that he could not be criticized with his work. Michelangelo's Last Judgment received public negative reviews at the time, all because nude figures were considered to be inappropriate for such places. He fought back by portraying his chief, an Italian official, as the devil and himself a flight saint. In our Explorica visit to St. Peter's Basilica, we were unable to take photos in the Sistine Chapels, but we were able to see each section in greater detail. The actual view of the chapel cannot be appreciated more than in a photograph. Tomb of Michelangelo, Santa Croce Church, Florence, Italia. During the Explorica trip, we visited Santa Croce Church in Florence. Many famous Italians are buried in that church, including Michelangelo. The three figures on his tomb represent paintings, sculpture, and architecture, the areas of his greatest achievements. Patrons allow Michelangelo to flourish. Instead of having to worry about earning his daily living, he had the opportunity to use his smarts and his best advantage as a painter, sculptor, architect, and a poet. He was and still will be the best investment for the wealthy of his time and representing the best of the Renaissance period. Today, the wealthy have sports stadiums, performing arts centers named after them. But in Michelangelo's time, this work remains the best of the examples of art, beauty, and history.